Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome back to the Purpose Focused Advisor podcast. Rob Brown here, along with my co-host, Phil Calandra, and a very special guest today. He calls himself on LinkedIn the original referral coach. I think he should just change that to the OG. We have Bill Cates with us, who is one of my heroes in the industry. And here, one of the ways that I define a hero is someone who has served an industry for a long time, consistently delivering valuable advice over and over again, because he wants the people that he works with to be better at what they do. And to me, Bill, that's a high compliment, but well-deserved in your case.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
So, Bill, Phil and I were talking before the podcast. We were wondering how one becomes a referral coach. What did you do to get started?
Sure. Let's go back to about 1995. That's how long I've been at this. And I was a coach, speaker, trainer, mostly dealing with sales and particularly prospecting. I've always been fascinated with how to identify and find and get in touch with new folks. But I was looking to narrow my expertise, if you will. And I remember listening to some audio tapes. Some of the folks listening will remember audio tapes. And from a guy named Scott Kramnick, who was a life insurance professional, wrote a book and recorded on audio called Expecting Referrals. And I liked it, but I thought, I would do it this way and I would say it this way. And so within about a month, I decided I was going to write a book, my first book, B2B book, if you will, around referrals. And so Unlimited Referrals came out in 1996. And that's when, within about a year's time, I realized that it was a perfect match for the financial services industry. They all knew the value of referrals. They weren't necessarily that good at it. They wanted to get better. And that hasn't changed in 30 years of doing this, or whatever, to almost 30. And so I've devoted my career to helping financial advisors of different types over the years as the industry's changed and morphed. To getting more clients, to referrals, personal introductions from clients, from centers of influence. I talk about other things too, but that's the emphasis. And I've been at it so long, I gave myself the moniker the original referral coach.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think you probably were the original, and I have some of the original books when I started selling life insurance myself in the early 2000s. So something you said, and I think we're going to get into this, Rob, you're going to throw the questions at Bill. Why are those of us in the financial services industry so bad at the referral conversation? And and good for your business, after 30 years, you have the new book, the sequel to the sequel to the sequel. But why are we so bad at this?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not going to say everybody's bad. And a lot of advisors, financial professionals, are getting unsolicited referrals and introductions, and that counts. That should not be diminished, because it means you're referable. It means you're worthy of remark. You're providing remarkable experiences, worthy of remark. Now, the challenge in that is, for some, it's not always enough, or it's not always the right type. They may be getting referrals to the wrong types of clients that they want these days. So that can be the challenge in the unsolicited side. Yeah, The biggest challenge is really in the ask, in the being appropriately proactive, how to do it without begging, without pushing. Advisors who come to me for coaching and training, and it's invariable that they will use these words. They'll say, how can I do this without looking like the cheesy referral guy or creepy referral guy? I hear that all the time, and of course there is a way, and um, so that's it. It's a lot of head trash. It's a lot of I don't want to look needy, pushy, etc. And so that's what happens. And you know, I often hear this. Well, doctors don't ask for referrals. Well, first of all, you're not a doctor, you're a financial advisor, so don't compare your world to their world. Yeah, but they're professionals, and well, doctors have networks of referrals. Doctors usually do quite well in terms of networking and study groups and letting them be known. So they actually do work with referrals. No, they don't usually ask their patients for them. I get that. And the truth is, if an advisor was so well networked with centers of influence, with other folks, yeah, maybe they wouldn't have to ask, and they would get a plethora of the right types of people coming their way.
That's great. That's very true.
Bill, as you were talking, something popped into my mind. I was reading a study, I don't know if it's maybe a year or so ago, that basically said in the financial advice business, referrals are dead. And then they showed these statistics that were hard to parse, that indicated what they were, the headline that they were trying to prove. I don't know about you, but I still find in working with financial advisors that referrals and introductions are the biggest source of high quality new business. And it really doesn't matter how you go about your business. It kind of ties back to that.
Yeah, the studies that I've seen, and look, anyone can quote a study and make the statistics work, you know, in their way, and we all have our predilections to what we like, and obviously I favor relationship marketing and everything that falls underneath that. So I'm going to see the world that way. But the studies I have seen have shown that most folks who hire financial advisors prefer to meet those folks through a recommendation from someone they already trust. Could be a friend, family member, a colleague, could be another trusted advisor like an accountant, like an attorney. But those tend to yield the best. They tend to yield the highest conversion rate, if you will, from prospect to client. It doesn't mean that other things can't work, and other things can work. For instance, I wrote a book called Radical Relevance, and one of the aspects of radical relevance was how do you create a relevant reputation within a target market? And so if you do create that reputation within a target market, you can start to attract people to you, and could be through referrals. It could be just through reputation and awareness. So there are a lot of ways to do this, but it's usually the relationship way that's the most effective, without question. If you're using LinkedIn, for instance, having a target market, having a clear, well-defined target market, everything you do within LinkedIn will be more effective, will work better, and it's easier to get referrals. So yeah, referrals are not dead. Now, I do like to use the word introductions. So, you know, even though I called my book The Language of Referrals, you know, people ask me, Bill, well, you talk about introductions. Why'd you call the book The Language of Referrals? Well, here's a principle at hand in marketing, that whenever we're talking about our value or talking about what we do to prospects, clients, influencers, we always want to use words and concepts that are familiar, that are already in the brain of that person receiving the message. So if I called my book The Language of Introductions, I'd get a lot of, I wonder, what does that really mean, right? Introductions, how to introduce people to others. What does that really mean? But when I say language of referrals, people instantly get it. And then in the book, I talk about how it's so hard to reach folks these days that the old referred lead, called George, use my name, just doesn't work the way it used to. And so when we're the prospect, the client, an influencer, we definitely want to use the word that represents what we really want, which is an introduction. So you'll hear me use both words today, but when we're, client facing, if you will, let's make sure we use the word introductions.
Perfect. That's great. Phil, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that I love the way that you teach and the way that you talk about introductions, because the referral to me and I've built the large part of my practice when I was still building my practice off of referrals. Um, and people gain an immense amount of trust right out of the gate from somebody that is introduced to them.
Right.
But one of the things that you said is the difference in language between the referral. It doesn't work the way that it used to do. It's more of an introduction. Are there things that we need to be thinking about now? And maybe this is the highlight of the new book, so I don't want to steal it yet.
That's right.
The way that things shift, the way industry, the way the mindset shifts, the way social media has shifted, the way we trust or distrust media has shifted. What is that going to look like for, the top producers, the top advisors that are going to ascend to the top as well, from the old referral gathering ask and the new introduction kind of approach? Because it sounded like there's some differences.
Yeah, that's a big question, and there's a few things that come to mind. Referrals / introductions work, and you use the word trust, and I like to call it borrowed trust, meaning we borrow the trust in one relationship long enough to earn our own trust in the new relationship. Eventually, we have to earn our own, but we borrow. Obviously, the level of trust between the referral source, the introducer, and this new prospect, the higher that is, then the more borrowed trust we're borrowing, right? So they're not all referrals or introductions are created equal, in the sense that sometimes they're very strong relationships providing that introduction. Sometimes they're not. I found when it comes to the introduction, what's changed, and one reason we want to use the word introductions, well, the two things have changed. One is just hard to reach people. And the other is a lot of people have had bad experiences with referrals.
Yeah.
Advisors have, clients have. That's another reason to favor the word introductions, just because we don't want to necessarily, trigger some bad experience that they may have had. So we're always educating our prospects and clients that if they do think of someone, that we're going to be careful how we handle this. We're going to make sure we're going to collaborate. We're going to craft an introduction that feels comfortable for everybody. I like to use the words that the Food and Drug Administration uses for approving a drug: safe and effective. That's what we want for introductions, right? We want them to feel safe for everybody and to be effective. And what does effective mean? It means relevant. We need the introduction to be relevant to that new prospect. Now, sometimes that borrowed trust is so high that the prospects will say, well, if my friend Jay is working with you, that's good enough for me. But that's not usually the case. There's usually a little more that has to go on. So if every advisor looked at their book of business, I bet, and it's going to vary, but it'd be somewhere between 75 to 80% of their clients came to them because something was going on in their life, right? There was a money in motion, life event, something triggered their awareness to seek out the counsel of a professional advisor, right?
Right.
So when we put the two of those together, when we take the borrowed trust that comes from the trusted relationship, and there's something going on in that client's life that's important to them, and we make the introduction about that, now we have a relevant and compelling introduction, which is going to get a response from the prospect. Good chance it's going to continue to move forward. So back to language, since the book is The Language of Referrals, one of the questions we want to ask our introducer: what's going on in his life, her life, their life that's important to them right now? What's on their life's radar? Or you could even do business. What's on their business radar? And because money intersects all aspects of one's life, whatever's on their life's radar, that could be the reason for the introduction. Here's why I'm introducing you to my advisor. And that creates a much more effective connection than just kind of a random, hey, you should know this guy, right?
Right. Perfect. And by the way, for our listeners and viewers, I'm holding up Bill's new book, The Language of Referrals.
And so am I. I just happen to have one
Well, I don't have
handy.
one.
Well,
I
we
don't
got to
have
get
one
one
yet.
to you, Phil. Rob,
Please.
send me Phil's
But I,
address. Let's get one over to Phil.
we'll make sure we do that at the end of the call. But
Yeah.
I wanted to stop and say that because one of the things that I am gaining from reading this book, and I have not been able to get through the whole thing, is it is so tactical and instructional. It's not just about theory. It is about how to actually get into the mindset of being someone who is open to the possibility that you can build the business of your dreams if you have the mindset that you are valuable and referable. And I think you even talk about that in the first part of the book, Bill. You talk
Right.
about developing the right inner script.
Yes.
And I know that's something that some of my clients struggle with, is just getting that past that feeling that either they aren't worthy or somehow they'll, as you said earlier, be perceived as being, a referral pusher. And they've got to get the mindset right. So why do you start with that in your book?
Well, the inner language of referrals, the inner language of introductions, it's paramount to making the rest of it work. Because if we believe that, let's say, asking for introductions is risky and pushy and going to hurt relationships, well, we'll never go there, right? It's a belief that will stop us. If we're not sure if our value is worth sharing, if we believe that asking for help is a sign of weakness, if we believe these things, then consciously or unconsciously, we won't go there. And so some of the things I like to talk about in the language of the inner language is, first of all, understanding the lifetime value of a client. Lifetime value of a client is not just the business you can do with them over a lifetime, which can be great, substantial, win-win, continual win-win. It's also who they can introduce you to over a lifetime. But if that's not your thinking and your awareness, you won't even look for those, and you won't even notice when those chances are there. A lot of folks, a lot of advisors believe, and this is a partial true, that just serving the heck out of my clients, I'll get all the referrals, I'll get all the growth I need. Just deliver great, incredible experiences. And there's some truth to that a lot of advisors that I've interviewed for my podcast and I've coached do a wonderful job with the client experience. And they do get unsolicited referrals, introductions. We usually work with them to make sure they're getting the right ones, not just any, but the right ones. And sometimes they come to me because that's working, but they're not being proactive. And so they realize they're sitting on a gold mine of opportunity. The folks that come to me, usually two things. They know they're on a gold mine of opportunity, and just they didn't like how they were taught when they first got started in the business, or it just never felt right to them. And they're just looking to tap into that. Sometimes they even feel a little guilty because they know there's that opportunity to serve. And others that come to me quite often is because they've hired junior or associate advisors, and they don't want to be the rainmaker anymore, or they want to make sure that someone else is skilled in what they knew how to do naturally. So the key is understanding that if you want to go from incremental growth to exponential growth, one of the ways to do that is to multiply your best clients. We talk to our clients about the value of compounded interest over time, right? Time is the best friend, and compounding and all that. Well, the same thing really applies to our practice. If we bring people in through the right way, then we're going to get that snowball effect. We're going to get that multiplier effect, and it gets easier and easier and easier over time. So yeah, the mindset is pretty critical. And then that opens one up to the strategies and the tactics.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so important. I'm glad I just felt, and I'm glad you wrote about that, because I don't think I've ever thought about it completely that way before. And probably because I'm just, sometimes I've coached Phil. He knows I can be very black and white. This is what works. You just need to do it. And, we'll call it an elegant process, if that'll make you feel better. But ultimately, you've got to just make sure that you're having the conversations and making sure your clients are consistently aware of the fact that you're open to introductions.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing you want to hear from a client, well, maybe not the last thing, but one of the things you don't want to hear from a client, especially an A client, B plus, A plus client, is, are you still taking on new clients?
Right.
You want them to know that you're never too busy to see if you can be a resource for others. Those are the operative words, by the way, to see. Those are the qualifier words. And, I've worked with folks that are really almost at capacity, or they're very successful and will just joke and say fat and happy, right? But I've never met anybody that isn't willing to take on a right fit client. If that person is the right fit, then they'll find a way. They'll do it. So it's a range of what people are looking for. Obviously, some people are looking for quantity and quality. Some are just looking for quality and not so much the quantity issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's also part of what you write about and talk about is really measuring that, to think about what the possibilities are, because at some point, if you're really successful in the introduction business, you may get to a point where a client that may have been really ideal to you previously isn't a right fit anymore, and you have to be willing to admit that and to find a way to build that into what you're doing.
Yeah, and that is clearly a challenge for a lot of successful advisors, is it not? Is how do I keep serving these people? Am I really the right advisor for them anymore? I found that part of that decision process really needs to be that last thing I said. In other words, what's best for the client? If we always think in terms of what's best for the client, then we're usually going to make the right decision. And if they're no longer a great fit, or a prospect comes along that isn't a great fit for your business and what you want to do and how you want to serve people and the type of work you like to do, et cetera, well, then you're not the right advisor for them, and they should be working with someone else. So certainly that's why some advisors will bring on associate, junior advisors, or partner up. I think that every advisor should have other relationships with other advisors who may have different specialties and expertises, and their target market may be different, so that people get the help. And you could say yes to the referral at the beginning, but with the caveat, you're going to make sure that the net result is they're working with the right person. And by the way, let me just shift for a second back to the mindset. The biggest mindset I think that needs to be in place around this is truly believing in the value that you bring to prospects and clients, and that it's worth paying it forward to others, that you're kind of on a mission to bring this important work of building financial dignity, of building wealth over generations, and all the other various great things you do, funding dreams, funding bucket list items, all the important things, right? Protection. That's important work. And that's where this all has to come from. All of this talking about being proactive and promoting and asking and all that, it's all got to come from that place of understanding that this work is critical, important work in really every human's life. Whether you're doing it or someone else is doing it, the work is critical.
Yeah, one of the things that I think I struggled with, and maybe others do as well, is trying to be proactive is different than systematizing and actually having a process that the advisor is going to, number one, understand, not just intellectually, but emotionally, because the mindset comes from a point of emotion, and that they're going to be able to continually work the plan. It's like we tell our clients, we're going to build a financial plan. Now your job is not to mess up the plan, just work the plan. So, I know there's got to be some ongoing, checklists and tools and resources. I can't have you come and speak to my entire firm, probably because you're so busy, but within the new book, Bill, how do we systematize these types of things? Just like I think you did that with one of the previous book or two, that if I remember that right.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, and just in terms of the process itself, and we definitely talk about this in the book. some key behaviors that will produce the results you want, right? It's one thing to think I would like to get X number of referrals this month, this year, or whatever, new clients. I call that kind of an achievement goal. But then we need to have behavioral goals, and that's what a process does. The process creates the behavior. And so a few quick things. One is something I teach called the value discussion or value check-in. This is, we're becoming referable, or as someone said in a recent class I did, don't you mean introducible? Well, yeah, I suppose so. We're becoming introducible when value's been delivered and value's been recognized. So part of the process is to pay attention to all the value recognizing statements that prospects and clients make, all the ways they say thank you and appreciate your value. By the way, that's one of the characteristics of a right fit client, is someone who appreciates your value for the reasons you want to be appreciated, right? It's a good feeling when that happens. This value check-in is something we really want to institute for all our relationships, most every meeting, maybe not every, but a lot, that we're checking in and say, we covered a lot of things here today. What stands out as the most important? Or how would you prioritize what we talked about today? Or any open-ended question that gets your prospect or client starting to relate to the value that's been delivered. That's something that should happen whether you ever ask for introductions or not. That's kind of step one. Step two in the process is, and one of the parts of the book, part 3, is the language of promoting or encouraging introductions. Someone says, hey, this is great. We love working with you, yada, yada. Well, how do we leverage that? Well, one way we can leverage it is in the promoting or encouraging, and say, hey, great, don't keep this important work a secret. Don't keep me a secret. Never too busy to see if I can be a resource for others. And then the next step would be the asking. So I got an email this morning from a group that I'm coaching, and they want to start establishing some habits and some goals and behaviors, key performance indicators, et cetera. And so one of the things they wanted to do is make sure they had 12 asks for referrals a week, right? That their advisors would ask for referrals at least 12 times in a week. Now, for some advisors, that's, whoa, I would probably never do that. And others, who knows? That's just a number. It's arbitrary. And I said, look, that's great. Nothing wrong with having that as an aspirational goal. But if they've never been asking up until this point, that's not going to happen right away.
That's a mountain to climb.
It is a mountain to climb, especially if there's, mindset stuff getting in the way, and they don't have the technique and they don't have the skill yet. And so I said, let's start with a value discussion, then we'll work into promoting, and then we'll start to work into asking. And, over a period of 3, 4, 5 weeks, then we can start to get the asking as a regular habit. And then we can increase the amount of asking that happens at the right time. So yeah, process is very important. And it's hard to go from 0 to 60, from not asking at all to asking on a semi, fairly regular basis. Overnight. Takes time. You got to build the skill.
Yeah, it's just like building AUM. When you set a big target for yourself for growth, and you're averaging a number, a lower number, you want to average a higher number. You don't go straight from that, $10 million a month to $20 million a month. There's probably some steps in there that you'll get to that 20 million a month if that's what you want to get to, but you're not going to do it the first month. So why set that false expectation? So I think you're suggesting very much the same thing in building that referral conversation into your KPIs is, maybe aspirationally you want to get to that 12 a week, but if you're doing 0, hey, just do a couple, get the, and set the other stages that precede that value question. I love that value question. I think that's probably my favorite takeaway from stuff that I have read from you or listened to you talk about before is really helping clients understand what it is they value about you, and sharing it with you just builds an incredible amount of trust.
Yeah, no question. And if someone says, hey, this is great, I appreciate it, then use the magic words that I love to teach. In the back of the book, I have some I don't call them magic words. I call them power phrases or something. But one of those is tell me more. So if someone says, "Hey, this has been great, really appreciate it," well, wonderful, great. Tell me more. What's resonating with you, right? Help them get more in touch with the value, and help yourself get more in touch with the value. And seeing that how what you do resonates with other people, we learn from that. And again, it could be a leverageable moment.
For sure.
I like that.
Financial advisors live in a world of questions. But too often when we ask a question, we expect a response and then we're going to stop there. But when we ask a question, pause and say things like, tell me more. Why did you say that? Help me understand. Whether you're trying to build rapport and referrals, or you're trying to close business and help somebody solve a challenge, they're just such powerful words. But taking the time to ask that series of questions, there's never one perfect question. So I love tell me more, and that really makes a huge difference.
It works with objections too. It works with resistance. If someone is resistant to something, client, friend, family member, whatever, tell me more. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to tell you more, and you're going to learn, and you're going to gain more context, and you're going to come up with a better, more appropriate response. Doesn't mean you're going to push them to do something they don't want to do, but you'll have a better conversation with them for sure.
Right. And you can wrap your solution, how you think you can help them, around their language and not your language, because you can use the tell me more response as part of your recommendation or solving the objection.
Absolutely.
Well, Bill, we're coming up on the end here, so it's probably time to land the plane. Phil, any last questions or thoughts that you want to share, that since we still have the referral OG on board?
Yeah, this has been great. Bill, I guess my last question would be, if you were coaching a brand new to the industry financial advisor, not someone like Rob, who's been around, I've been around 20 years, but I still like to learn. I still want to coach the advisors on my team. If you were coaching a brand new advisor and you were using this book as the tool, because you have a lot of other resources, what would be the top 3 or 4 things that you would impart to a young advisor right out of the gate using this tool?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I often hear from newer advisors that they're not sure this applies to them because they don't have a book of business. They don't have 100, 200, 300 clients they can go back to. True. And you can still use the process from the get-go with every person you meet. And it really goes back to what I talked about before, which is always do the value check-in. Brand new, first meeting. We've covered a lot of things here today. What stands out is the most important. And along the way, you can certainly promote the possibility of introductions right away. Don't keep me secret. We got 11 of them in the books. There's a lot of ways to do it. And then asking. And folks that are newer in this business are probably going to be, probably you're in a little needier place, right? So you may ask a little sooner. You may ask a little more often, and perhaps you have to. The challenge with new folks is intellectually they get their value, but viscerally, emotionally, in their body, et cetera, in their heart, they don't have it yet. And so that's one of the challenges for the newer folks. And when I work with firms, one of the things I suggest is that do everything you can to make sure these folks really, truly understand the value that they bring to prospects and clients, because they don't get that yet. That's why they think they're making it all about them. They think they're making it all about them because they don't yet know all the ramifications, the good, positive ramifications of the work that they do with their clients. And so that's a big piece of it. Using case studies, using examples, talking to specific clients to hear what they say about the work. All of that is critical for these newer folks.
That's so good. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Bill, we've been talking a lot about what's in the language of referrals. For somebody listening to this podcast who are mostly financial professionals who are successful at what they're doing or trying to level up and work with greater purpose, and I think this idea of introductions is a perfect example of thinking more about purpose. What's the best way for, besides buying the book, for them to learn more about you and what you're doing?
Sure. Well, one thing about the book, first of all, is that if you get the book, you're getting more than the book. And here's what I mean by that. We've created the Language of Referrals toolkit. And if you get the book, there's several pages in the book that tell you how to get to the toolkit. And it's things that I didn't want to make the book too big. And it's other things I've developed since actually finishing the book, and I've developed other things, and I want to give. So it's all free. It's all included. You buy the book, whether it's audio or Kindle or paperback, you'll get access to the Language of Referrals toolkit. To reach me, referralcoach.com. To reach a bunch of free resources, referralcoach.com/resources. I like to say they're free but valuable. And shoot me an email. I'm happy to hear from anybody. Just love to chat with folks about the value. And that's bill@referralcoach.com. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. I have found in our, I told you when we first met that I have met you a couple of times previously, but in big crowds. So hard to necessarily remember each person that you've spoken to. But I've just really enjoyed following you. I enjoy your passion and just your openness and your responsiveness to working with people. You just are so authentic in what you do. And I know you've changed a lot of lives of advisors who in turn have changed a lot of lives of the people they serve. So that multiplier effect is absolutely incredible. So it was a true honor to have you on there I go again, the Purpose Focused Advisor podcast. Anyway, Bill, thanks for being with us. To our audience, as always, remember, we are rooting for your success, and we will see you next week.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.